Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're taking a deep dive into the world of judo, but not just the throws and grappling.
Right.
We're really going deep into the minds of judo athletes,
Yeah.
specifically in Turkey.
Exactly.
We've got some fascinating research to unpack. This paper actually digs into the mental well-being
Yes.
of these athletes and how it's connected to their relationships with their coaches and their support systems.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff.
It is. And before we get too far, I want to give a shout out to the authors of this paper, Andrew Schinel, Andreas Kudel, Ilan Adilozuada, and Sophia Jowett.
Great work they did.
Definitely. Now, when we think about judo, we often focus on the physicality of it, right?
Yeah, the strength, the skill.
But the mental game is equally important.
Oh, absolutely. It's huge.
And that's what this research really gets at.
Yeah, and it's something that hasn't been studied enough, particularly in judo.
Right.
And within the Turkish sports system.
So this is kind of breaking new ground.
Yeah, we're hoping to shed light on some crucial insights for coaches, athletes, and really anyone involved in sports.
So let's get into it.
Okay.
One of the things that really jumped out at me from this study was the finding that mental health symptoms are actually more common
Oh, yeah.
in athletes who are still competing
Interesting.
compared to those who have retired. Specifically, they found that anxiety and depression affect about 34% of current athletes.
Wow.
And alcohol misuse impacts 19%.
Those are significant numbers.
They are, and it really highlights the pressure these athletes are under.
Yeah, we often focus on the physical demands of sports, but the psychological pressures are just as real.
Absolutely.
Right.
And this study really digs into that aspect.
Yeah.
It goes beyond the physical and explores those.
Mental and emotional challenges.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the researchers use something called the 3+1 C's model to kind of explain the coach-athlete relationship.
Okay.
When I first saw that, I thought,
2+1, what?
what is that? But it actually makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
It focuses on closeness, commitment, complementarity, and co-orientation.
Right, so it's about building a strong and well-rounded relationship.
Exactly. And here's where things get really interesting for me.
Okay.
The study found that while a strong coach-athlete relationship is important, it doesn't automatically mean better mental health-related psychological safety.
Interesting.
So you can have a great bond with your coach, but it doesn't guarantee that you'll feel safe to talk about your mental health.
That's a really important distinction. I think we tend to assume that a close relationship automatically equals a safe space to be vulnerable, but
Yeah, it's not always the case.
this research highlights the importance of the support that comes from that relationship. It's how supported the athlete feels both within the sport and in their personal life.
So it's kind of like the relationship is the foundation, but
Yeah.
support is the structure built on top of it. You need both for a strong and stable building.
Absolutely. A great analogy.
And speaking of support, that brings us to one of the study's biggest findings.
Okay, let's hear it.
The strongest predictor of mental well-being among these judokas was the support they felt from their coaches, teammates, family, and friends.
That makes sense, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
But I think we often underestimate just how powerful that feeling of being supported can be, especially in a high-pressure environment like competitive judo.
It's huge. It's like having a whole team backing you up on and off the mat.
Exactly. And the study breaks down the different types of support, emotional esteem, informational, tangible, and even autonomy support, each one playing a vital role in helping athletes deal with stress and build resilience.
We could do a whole deep dive just on the different types of support. Maybe we will.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I want to go back to this idea of mental health-related psychological safety.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
It is. Can you break it down for us a bit more? What does it actually look like in a judo setting?
Sure. So essentially, it's about creating an environment where athletes feel comfortable discussing mental health challenges. It's about them feeling supported in speaking up, understanding the signs of mental health struggles, and knowing that they won't face stigma for experiencing those challenges.
So it's about normalizing conversations about mental health and making it okay to not be okay.
Exactly. Especially in a world that's as demanding as competitive sports.
I imagine that can be tough given the cultural context of Turkish sport.
Right.
I mean, we know that culture plays a role in how we view and talk about mental health.
It absolutely does, and that's one of the things that makes this study so interesting. It gives us valuable insights into how cultural nuances might affect support systems and the dynamics between coaches and athletes.
So the cultural context adds another layer of complexity to understanding these dynamics.
For sure. It's definitely something we'll explore further in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good to me. Okay, so we're back. And we left off talking about all these different types of support.
Right.
Remember we were talking about emotional esteem,
Hmm.
informational, tangible, and autonomy support?
Yeah, it's like a whole buffet of support.
It is a support buffet. That's a good way to put it.
Right.
So let's dig into each of these a little bit more. Starting with emotional support, what does that actually look like?
Well, it's really about that feeling of being understood and cared for, right?
Yeah.
Having someone to listen without judgment when you're struggling.
Like a shoulder to cry on.
Yeah, exactly. And in a high pressure world like competitive judo, that kind of emotional safety net can be incredibly valuable.
It can. It's like having a safe harbor to sail into when the seas get rough.
I like that.
Right.
Yeah, it's knowing someone's there to help you weather the storm.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got emotional support. What about esteem support? Is that about cheering someone on from the sidelines?
It's definitely part of it, but it's more than just cheering. It's about bolstering an athlete's confidence and self-worth.
So it's about making them feel good about themselves.
Exactly. Recognizing their strengths, celebrating their achievements, providing that positive reinforcement that helps them believe in themselves.
And I imagine in a sport like judo, where self-belief is so crucial for success, this kind of support can be a real game changer.
It can make or break an athlete.
It's like having someone in your corner who truly sees your potential, even when you're doubting yourself.
Yeah, they remind you of your strengths, help you see your own worth.
Okay, so we've got the emotional support, the confidence boost. What about informational support? What does that entail?
Informational support is all about providing guidance and knowledge that helps athletes make informed decisions.
Okay, so is that like a coach giving technical advice on judo techniques?
It could be that, but it could also be strategies for managing pre-competition jitters, advice on dealing with a tough opponent.
So it's like giving them the tools and information they need to navigate the challenges they face.
Exactly, empowering them with knowledge.
It's like a judo GPS guiding them through the twists and turns of their athletic journey.
I love these analogies.
Right. Okay, so informational support, we've got that covered. What about tangible support? That one sounds pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah, it's the most practical type of support. It's about taking care of those logistical details that can weigh athletes down.
So things like providing equipment transportation,
Yeah, things like that. It's about freeing them up to focus on their training and performance.
taking care of the behind-the-scenes stuff so they can shine on the mat.
Exactly.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got emotional support, the confidence boost, guidance, practical help. What about this last one, autonomy support? That one sounds interesting.
Yeah, autonomy support is about encouraging independence and self-direction. It's about giving athletes choices, allowing them to have input into their training regimen, and respecting their individual needs and preferences.
So it's not just about telling athletes what to do, it's about empowering them to be active participants in their own judo journey.
Exactly. It's about fostering a sense of ownership and empowerment, which can be incredibly motivating.
So it's recognizing that they're not just athletes, they're individuals with their own goals and aspirations.
Right. Autonomy support is about acknowledging that athletes are not robots. They're people with their own thoughts, feelings, and motivations.
And by supporting their autonomy coaches, can actually create an environment where athletes are more intrinsically motivated.
Exactly. Leading to greater satisfaction and ultimately better performance.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about fostering a sense of ownership and encouraging athletes to take the reins of their own development.
Yeah, it's a collaborative approach.
Okay, so we've got this incredible support system in place, emotional backing, confidence boosts, guidance, practical help, and even encouragement for independence. It's no wonder it's such a strong predictor of mental well-being.
I know it's really amazing to see how all these different types of support come together to create a positive and supportive environment.
And what's really interesting is that the study found that support outside of sport, from family and friends, was actually the strongest predictor of mental well-being.
Yeah, that's huge. It really underscores the importance of those personal connections that extend beyond the world of judo.
It's like having a solid foundation of support that goes beyond the gym or the training mat.
Right. Those close relationships provide a sense of belonging, unconditional love. That kind of support can be incredibly powerful.
Especially when an athlete is facing setbacks or dealing with the pressure of competition.
Absolutely. It's like having a safety net, a support system that's always there no matter what.
Now, we can't forget that this study specifically focused on Turkish judo athletes.
Right.
And I'm curious to know how the cultural aspects play into all of this.
That's a great point, and it's one of the things that makes this research so fascinating. Turkish culture places a strong emphasis on family and close-knit communities.
It's a collectivist society, right?
Yes, very much so. Individuals are deeply connected to their families and social groups. This cultural backdrop likely influences the types and levels of support that judo athletes receive.
So the cultural context adds another layer of complexity to understanding the dynamics of support.
Absolutely, and it would be interesting to explore how this emphasis on family support might interact with the coach-athlete relationship in the Turkish context.
Yeah, is there a potential for overlap or even conflict between these two sources of support?
Exactly. Those are questions that future research could definitely delve into.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from the different types of support to the cultural nuances at play.
We have.
But before we wrap up, we need to address the elephant in the room, the study's limitations.
Right, because every research project has its limitations, and it's important to acknowledge those.
Absolutely. Understanding those limitations is key to interpreting the findings accurately and seeing where more research is needed.
We'll explore those limitations in detail in the final part of our deep dive, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of judo and mental well-being.
Yeah,
In our last segment, we were just starting to talk about the limitations of the study.
right. Limitations are important.
Every study has them,
Yeah,
and understanding them is key to interpreting the findings accurately.
absolutely.
So let's jump right in. One of the main limitations that was highlighted was the correlational nature of the research.
Right.
So it's like that saying, correlation doesn't equal causation.
Yeah. Oh, classic.
Just because two things are related doesn't mean that one directly causes the other.
Exactly.
And in this case, the study found a strong connection between perceived support and mental well-being.
Right.
But we can't say for certain, based on this study alone, that a strong support system is the direct cause of that better mental health.
There could be other factors at play that weren't measured in the study.
So while a supportive environment seems to go hand in hand with better mental health,
Yeah.
it's like a puzzle where we might be missing a few pieces.
I like that.
Right.
A good analogy.
Now, another limitation was the cross-sectional design of the study, meaning the data was collected at a single point in time.
Right. A snapshot in time.
It's like taking a snapshot of these athletes' lives and relationships.
Yeah.
But we don't get to see how things change over time.
Right.
And a longitudinal study where we follow those athletes over a longer period would give us a much richer understanding
For sure.
of how these relationships and their effects on mental well-being evolve.
You'd see the whole movie
Right.
instead of just one picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the third limitation was the specific measure of psychological safety that they used.
Okay.
Now, it was a good tool for capturing those aspects related to mental health,
Yeah.
but it may have missed some of those broader elements of psychological safety.
Like what kind of things?
Things like feeling safe to take risks, make mistakes, or challenge the status quo.
Okay, so a bit more of a holistic view of psychological safety.
Exactly, and I think that's important to keep in mind,
For sure.
because psychological safety is a complex concept,
It is.
and this particular tool might not have captured all of its nuances.
Yeah, it might have a bit of tunnel vision focusing specifically on mental health
Right.
and overlooking other important aspects that contribute to well-being.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about the limitations of this study.
Yeah.
But let's step back for a second and look at the bigger picture.
Okay.
What are some of the key takeaways from this research? And how can we apply these insights
Right.
to the world of judo and beyond?
Well, for me, the biggest takeaway is the undeniable power of perceived support,
Yeah,
whether it's coming from coaches, teammates, family, or friends.
right.
That feeling of being supported can make a world of difference in someone's mental well-being. And I think that goes beyond just athletes.
Absolutely. It applies to everyone.
Everyone.
Creating those supportive environments where people feel safe, heard, and valued is so important for well-being, no matter what you do in life.
It's like that saying, it takes a village
Right. It takes a village.
to raise a child.
Or to support an individual's mental health.
Absolutely.
Now, for coaches, this research really emphasizes the importance of going beyond just the technical training
Yeah.
and really fostering those supportive relationships with their athletes.
Being a mentor, a confidant,
Right.
someone who creates a safe space for athletes to open up about their struggles.
And knowing that they'll be met with empathy and understanding.
Exactly. It's about being more than just a coach. It's about being a human being who cares.
Right. And for sports organizations, this study highlights the need to invest in resources and programs that promote mental health awareness and support for athletes.
For sure.
It's about creating a culture that prioritizes mental well-being just as much as physical performance.
Mental health is just as important as physical health.
Exactly. And providing athletes with the tools and resources they need to thrive both on and off the mat.
Couldn't agree more.
So this research is a powerful reminder to all of us to appreciate and nurture our own support systems.
Yeah,
We all need people who believe in us, lift us up, and make us feel safe and supported.
absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of judo, mental well-being, and the power of support,
Hmm.
I want to leave our listeners with a final thought-provoking question.
Okay.
Given how crucial that support outside of sports is, what strategies could athletes, coaches, and sports organizations use to encourage greater involvement from those family members and friends?
Hmm.
How can we create a more holistic and integrated support system that bridges that gap between the world of sports
Interesting.
and an athlete's personal life? Something to think about as you go about your day. Thanks for joining us on this fascinating exploration